This is a fun little fly. This was inspired by the work of Jim Bessinger over at Fiber Dubbing Flies. Jim's a great guy and an excellent tyer, and if you get to see him at one of his shows, make sure you check out his materials that he sells, especially his alpaca dubbing. Alpaca dub is a really great material, and I am a non-compensated spokesman. Plus, Jim lives very close to me. All right, we're going to start with our hook. Our hook in this case, I'm going to use an Arex FW 560 in size 14. For thread, I'm using Uni, and this is 136 denier. It doesn't show good on that camera. 136 denier. And this is in wine color or burgundy color, if you want to call it that. We're going to start our thread about a hook eye back. I'm going to wrap that thread down the hook shank and get a base started. Because this is 136, I'm not as good at snapping it off as some people. Here we are. Now for our tailing, I'm using golden pheasant. And that golden pheasant, I'm going to separate a little bit of it by grabbing it and holding the spots, the little black stripes, as close together as I can. That will keep them in line. We don't want to get too far from that. I don't know if you can see that on that camera, but we can definitely see it on this one. Now I'm going to take and tie those in, and I want it about a hook shank length, but more importantly, I want this black spot right here to be just past the bend of the hook. So I'm going to catch that in and tie it back down to the actual bend of the hook. And I'm going to take off the excess right there. And that gives me a real beautiful tailing. Now in Jim's fly, he used golden pheasant that was dyed red. I'm going to stick with the orange, but if you want to go with the dyed red, that would be pretty cool too. It's actually a very nice fly with red on it. I'm going to use a little bit of ultra wire, and this is brassy sized. That wire gets tied in right on the bottom of the fly. I'm going to put it on the back side and bring my thread around so that as it torques, it's going to end up on the bottom of the fly. I'm going to bring that thread up, and I'm going to start building that little bit of a body. Now this is more of a wet fly, so it's more of a cigar shape than it is a taper. Now once it gets here to the bottom, I'm going to spin my bobbin just to loosen that thread up a little bit. Now I like to use Stockard's Touch Tub for these kinds of flies. So I'm going to take and just give it a little touch there, just a little bit. This is a little bit softer than most wax. I find that for fine dubbing like this, it does really grab on nicely and hold. I'm going to take a little puff. This is Nature Spirit Beaver Dubbing in claret. Just going to pull it apart, just get the fibers where I want them. And I'm going to put tiny little bits on here. Just kind of touch them on there. I don't typically use a true touch dubbing technique. only because I personally find it difficult to do. And I would much rather use what works for me. And that's an important thing when you're tying. Use what you use. Use what works for you. You don't know. You might just create a new technique. So we're going to get that noodle on there. And I'm going to start bringing that around. Dubbing that around. I've got some more dubbing already on here that I'm going to just pull up and add. And I don't know if you saw what I did there. I have a big puff of dubbing just kind of hanging on there, and I'm using that to feed my dubbing noodle. That way I don't have to stop mid-turn to add more, get more out of the package. It's already there on my thread. Let me crank my thread in a little bit. Here we go. Bring it down some more, stretch it out, thin it out, roll and twist it on. Now I'm going to dub all the way up to about the 2/3 way. Pull that dubbing down a little bit and twist a little bit more on there. And that will probably just about do us there. Oops, pulled on it. Here we go. Let me put it back on. There we go. And obviously this is not one of my silk-bodied wet flies that I've tied so many of. This has got that nice fuzzy little dubbing on there, and that's what I want. I want this thing to look a little buggy as it comes around. Now, for my wire, I'm bringing it one full around, and then I'm going to give it some nice turns with this copper wire. A nice ribbed body working here. I'm going to bring that on around. And I'm going to take that up to about the 2/3 point. And tie that copper wire down. Now I can helicopter that off. Bend that last little bit around and just give that a good tie down. Now at this point I'm bringing my thread all the way up to where my head's going to stop, right behind the eye. And then I'm going to come back over top of this wire right here just a little bit. Now you'll notice I got a lot of wire there, but I'm going to cover a lot of it up. I'm adding as much wire as I can to give this a little bit of weight. I want this to sink. I want this to be not quite at the film, not quite just at the surface, maybe just a little bit below. This is a good fly to take on a swing right around a nice pool and just let it drift right on through, let it do its thing. Watch it very carefully. If it just stops for just a split second, set the hook because you've got a fish. This fly is also very attractive. There's a lot of private water in our area, and they have a lot of stockers. And as opposed to the public area stockers, many of them are catch and release year round, and some of those stockers get pretty big. So it's not uncommon for us to have 24, 25-inch stockers with big old fat bellies on them. Now I'm going to put this on. It's looking like a hackle right this second, but we're going to fix that here in just a second. Because this is technically a wet fly, I'm going to come in and I'm going to preen all of this down. And that's going to mean I'm going to come in here, fold all this down, and pull it back. I keep poking myself with this barbless hook here. So I'm going to preen all of these fibers to point towards the back as best I can. And then I'm going to come in here and you'll see, because I'm using a fairly short hackle, I'm getting a lot of random fiber. So we'll go ahead and trim those off. And I'm also going to give this a haircut right across the top. Right there. Now, at this point, I'm going to use some brown dyed partridge. And I've got one here that has a lot of longer fibers on it. And I want to use that because I'm going to use that as my wing. So I want the wing to come as far back as I can. So I'm going to get quite a few of these fibers and I'm going to pull them out, get them at a 90-degree angle there. And I'm going to bring that all the way back across the back of the hook here. And I'm going to catch those in right here, just at the head. You see, that pops that wing right on up. Trim off this excess that's right here. Give it a few wraps to get a decent head base down. And now I'm going to come in with my whip finish tool. And incidentally, this is probably my favorite whip finish tool. I got this from PGH Tools. If you see those guys, they do a great job with their tools. And they're very practical, very comfortable, very good at what they're intended to be used for. They're great guys. If you see them at a show, make sure you buy something from them. We want to keep those guys around. We're almost there. The last step that I do is I use a little bit of Solarens, and this is thin, bone dry. I'll put a little bit on there. Just a little bit. The reason I like bone dry is that it's very much like a varnish that you would use without having to go and use an actual varnish. You can hit it with this, hit it with the UV, and you've got a great looking head on there. And that's a beautiful fly. And that is my claret winged wet fly. I hope you like it. I hope you like tying this fly. I hope it catches you lots of fish, and we'll see you on the water.